Hello, I'm Annie Mazes with Workman Publishing. Thank you for tuning in to our Workman Book Buzz. Here is our information if you want to connect with us socially at Instagram or Twitter. That's me. I handle all our library marketing for adult titles across all of the imprints at Workman. My colleague Caitlin Rubenstein handles our fabulous children's and YA books, but she is on maternity leave and probably having a bit more fun than anybody right now. Her baby is super cute. But I'm happy to help with any questions regarding kids' books, and as soon as she's back in July, she will be able to reach out. However, I am joined today by three other awesome humans, so you don't have to listen to me talk for the next 45 minutes. Betsy Glick is the publisher of Algonquin. Brian Ritter handles library marketing at Timber Press, and Megan Harley is the marketing guru for Algonquin Young Readers. Thank you all for being here today. Very important, librarians. If you would like to download the handout, this is the link. It is case sensitive, but after this presentation, you can download everything we talked about today, so you don't really need to remember everything. Plus, there's a ton of bonus books at the end that we won't be able to get to today, but I wanted you to know about it, and they are all accessible via this link. So please make note of this. And thank you. Thank you for being here, librarians. Thanks for tuning in. And while I do miss the face-to-face of ALA, I'm happy to be able to connect with you in some way, and I hope that you find our book buzz helpful. One exciting note before we kick off on the books, Workman is getting into the audiobook game. So starting with our fall list, everything is available as audio wherever you purchase your ebooks and print books. Starting off with some recent titles that have just come out, some personal faves of mine. When the World Feels Like a Scary Place is particularly relevant and useful right now. Dr. Abigail Gerwitz provides scripts for caregivers to have conversations with their children about big issues without putting your own worry and anxiety onto the children. She did add an entire chapter about COVID-19, and these are incredibly helpful conversation starters. And Why We Swim, I think, is a wonderful book. I love it. It's so fascinating. It's about humans' relationship with water throughout time, and I love the writing in this book. Next up, we have a few books that are coming soon that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because look at all of these stars. We've got an Own Voices short story collection, novels about family, marriage, and love, and an environmental memoir for fans of wild. This is a treasure trove of titles for you to explore and share. So my first book up is How to Astronaut by Terry Virts. It follows Terry's journey from astronaut training to becoming the commander of the International Space Station. But unlike many memoirs that have to do with astronauts, which tend to be a little bit sober and very serious, this is funny. It's offbeat and it's earnest, and it offers a behind-the-scenes look at the training, the basic rules, the lessons and procedures of space travel, including how to deal with a dead body in space, what it's like to film an IMAX movie in orbit, what exactly to do when nature calls. There are 51 chapters that answer these questions and so many more. In Case You Get Hit by a Bus is a simple, easy-to-follow program for organizing everything in your life, from Netflix passwords to social media accounts to finances and funeral plans, for a calmer life now and to make things easier for the loved ones you leave behind. The authors are the founders of Everplans, a digital company that helps people of all ages organize their lives. I am a huge evangelist for this book, having seen how the lack of preparedness can really affect those left behind, and I have meticulously started going through and figuring out what to do step by step. It's really a relief to understand that it's managed now, and I won't have to have the effects of my kiddo in the future. Something totally different, moving on to some great novels. His Only Wife by Afi Tepkel is Afi Tepkel is the protagonist in this story. She's a seamstress in a small town in Ghana when one day she is offered a life-changing opportunity, a proposal of marriage from a wealthy family of Alikam Ganyo, man she doesn't really know. She agrees, but soon realizes that Alikam is not quite the catch he seemed. He sends a stand-in to his own wedding, and only weeks after Afi is married and installed in a plush apartment in the capital city of Accra does she even meet her new husband. Turns out, He's in love with another woman that his family does not approve of, and Offie is supposed to win him back on behalf of them. But it is the city that eventually wins Offie's heart and gives her a life of independence that she never could have imagined for herself. A brilliant scholar and fierce advocate for women's rights, author Peace Adzomede infuses her debut novel with intelligence and humor. This is a charming book for readers of Chimamanda Adichie and Candace Carty-Williams. I highly recommend it. I'm so excited for Paper Bullets. First, it is a true story. And second, most importantly, it is about two brave and creative women determined to rebel against the Nazis as only they could through their art. Lucy Schwab and Suzanne Malher, better known by their artist names Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore, distributed Paper Bullets, wicked insults against Hitler, calls to rebel, and subversive fictional dialogues designed to demoralize Nazi troops until they were captured and sentenced to death in 1944. They survived and went on to create gender-bending art. The story is so good. It's for readers interested in Jewish history, LGBTQ movement, art, political resistance, and it has the support of a few little-known folks like Hampton Sides and Douglas Brinkley. In 2012, an Oregon woman opened up a package of Halloween decorations that she'd bought at Kmart, and something fell out that she wasn't expecting, an SOS letter handwritten in broken English by the prisoner who'd made and packaged the items. In Made in China, investigative journalist Amelia Pang pulls back the curtain on the labor camps that create the incredible number of products Americans purchase. The book follows the life of Sun Yi, the Chinese engineer who wrote the note after finding himself a political prisoner. Amelia's interviews with Sun Yi and other prisoners, plus her own experiences of traveling to China to follow falsified supply chains and track trucks from labor camps to warehouses, makes for a fascinating account. It's also an urgent call to action to be more conscientious about consumer habits and really hold businesses accountable. And now we're going to hand it over to Betsy.
Thank you, Annie. And hello, librarians. I really wish I could be with all of you in person, and someday, I have faith, we will all be together again. My first book is Down Along with That Devil's Bones. In 2015, journalist Connor Towne O'Neill traveled to Selma, Alabama to cover the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the civil rights march that descended into chaos when police attacked the marchers. There, O'Neill met a group of locals preparing the site for a new monument to controversial Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest, who, while not as well known as Robert E. Lee, is revered in some quarters as one of the most brutal Confederate soldiers of all, and who went on to be the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. As a white Northerner who grew up in Pennsylvania and didn't really think that the Civil War had anything to do with him, O'Neill had never heard of Forrest. But these people sparked O'Neill's curiosity. Why was this particular general so important to them? He latched onto the question like a great journalist does and discovered that there are other monuments to Forrest scattered across the South, sparking fierce controversies over what some folks call heritage and others a racist history. O'Neill travels to these monuments and has conversations with those invested in preserving them. And that forces him to examine his own role as a young white man in propping up white privilege. Whether he liked it or not, the statues were being put up in his name, too. Down Along with That Devil's Bones, A Reckoning with Monuments, Memory, and the Legacy of White Supremacy, publishing in October, is going to be a true conversation starter for readers interested in civil rights, the reemergence of white supremacy, and the growing divide in our current culture. Fans of Tony Horowitz and Robin DiAngelo will appreciate how this book joins the discussions those books started in a unique and tangible way. Gessie Lehman has called this book an astonishing work of nonfiction, and it delivers a vital message. Only by understanding our own history can we truly transcend the past. Next, for something totally different, for those of you who don't know who Meryl Marco is, she just received one of the biggest awards in comedy, and she's been called the most important comedy writer of the last 50 years. As the original head writer for David Letterman, she completely changed the face of modern comedy, inspiring a generation of comics and writers from Judd Apatow to Paul Rudnick. She invented, among many other bits of brilliance, Stupid Pet Tricks, and Reader Mail for The Letterman Show, and she won 4 Emmys for her work there. She's also written several novels. We are thrilled to be publishing her first graphic work in October. We Saw Scenery is a truly absurdist memoir that she began when she discovered her teenage diaries in a box in her basement. In We Saw Scenery, today's Myrtle looks at teenage Myrtle with wit, sympathy, and an absurdist eye, trying to figure out how the girl of yesterday became the woman of today. Every single page of this book contains a joke within a joke. For example, in speculating why we only remember the least important things, she begins a conversation with her hippocampus, which she portrays as, literally, a hippo on a college campus. Nell Scoville, author of Just the Funny Parts and herself a TV comedy writer, says, We Saw Scenery is revealing, sad, funny, and above all, relatable. Myrtle captures the experience of a young woman finding and holding on to her own voice, and we're all lucky she did. This is obviously a book for readers of Roz Chast, Ali Brosh's Hyperbole and a Half, and other books in the growing genre of graphic memoir. And we expect it to appeal to pretty much everyone who was once a teenage girl, especially those who felt out of place, which was all of us, right? And the last book I will be sharing with you is this year's Penn Bellwether Prize winner. This is a prize that was started by author Barbara Kingsolver to honor socially engaged fiction, and Algonquin has the great privilege of publishing these winners. The most recent Bellwether winner we published was Lisa Coe's The Lever, and Mudbound was also a Penn Bellwether winner. At the Edge of the Haight tackles the story of homelessness through the story of Maddie Donaldo, who has made a life for herself and created a family of sorts on the streets of San Francisco. But when she accidentally witnesses the murder of a teenage boy and is seen by the perpetrator, her relatively stable life is upended. Suddenly, everybody wants to talk to her, and people want to reunite her with her own family. Maddie must decide whether she wants to stay lost or be found. As Hillary Jordan says, this book pulled me deep into a world I knew little about, bringing the struggles of its young, homeless inhabitants to vivid, poignant life. Katherine Seligman is a journalist who has long been following the lives of the many young homeless people she has talked to over the years in San Francisco. After she and her husband witnessed a young woman dying in the park, she could not stop thinking about his life, the parents who'd lost him, and the ways in which so many are pushed to the periphery of our vision and our concern. This beautiful and insightful novel was born out of worry over all those making their homes under the trees of the park, just hoping to get to the next day. So it's topical, readable, and provocative, and clearly worthy of the Penn Bellwether attention, and of your attention as well. Thanks, and I think we're going back to Annie.
We are. Thank you so much, Betsy. The New Rules of Aging Well. Frank Lipean is a leader in wellness and integrative and functional medicine, and The New Rules of Aging Well contains everything he teaches his patients about reversing the so-called symptoms of aging. Symptoms like feeling lousy and looking puffy are absolutely not a given of aging. They're warning signs that you need to change your lifestyle. Hello! It's your lifestyle choices, not your genes, that have a tremendous impact on how you age and how you'll learn how to make the best choices in order to look younger and feel better all around. It pairs nicely with how to sleep. Sleep difficulties affect millions of people, and this book addresses what to do about that. What sets this book apart, though, is that Dr. Rafael Pelayo has spent over 25 years as both a clinical professor and practicing sleep physician. Pelayo's approach is to first teach readers how sleep works. He explains that nobody sleeps through the night, that the need for sleep is biological, but the way we sleep is learned, how much sleep you actually need each night, and that you can't get by with less. Then, once readers understand sleep and why it's so essential to our health and well-being, he offers a clear path to better sleep with a flexible approach that will work for everyone. Story has been publishing books into the how-to space for decades, and now they have put together a comprehensive collection for all interests, with dozens of useful and intriguing visual tutorials that cover how to carve a turkey, capture a swarm of bees, predict the weather by the clouds, darn socks, create a butterfly garden, set up a dog agility course, keep a nature sketchbook, navigate for the stars, and so much more. This rich resource will educate, fascinate, spark conversation, and inspire new hobbies and experiences. What does it mean to truly live gratefully every day? In Wake Up Grateful, Kristi Nelson, Executive Director of a network of grateful living, unlocks the path to recognizing abundance in every moment and gives readers the tools to bring this transformational shift in perspective into their daily lives. Nelson goes beyond the proverbial question of whether the glass is half full or half empty and encourages readers to awaken to the gift of having a glass at all. With questions for reflection, daily exercises, and perspective prompts for appreciating the fullness of life as it is right now, this book promises profound personal change through the practice of taking nothing for granted. Next up, we're joined by Brian Ritter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Ritter, and I handle library outreach for Timber Press. At Timber Press, our goal is to share the wonders of the natural world, and I have 3 great books to share with you today that show the depth of that mission. First up, we have As the World Burns, the new generation of activists and the landmark legal fight against climate change. This is a behind-the-scenes look at the climate lawsuit Juliana v. United States, in which 21 kids from across America sued the federal government over climate change. Their argument is that their constitutional right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are being violated by the inaction, and in many cases, the direct policies of the federal government. These young people have not had their day in court, however. Stymied by years by the actions of the federal government, the case was recently dismissed, and the plaintiffs plan to appeal that decision. Author Lee Vandervoo is an investigative journalist and activist whose work has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, and The Guardian. Her 2016 book, The Fish Market, about the gentrification of water in search for sustainable seafood, won the Oregon Book Award for general nonfiction. In As the World Burns, Lee details a year in the life of this lawsuit, as well as the people involved, and uses this approach to explore larger themes such as a growing youth activist movement, the role of the judicial branch, the judicial branch in America, the area of environmental law, as well as the effects of climate change, which provide a sadly convenient backdrop to the book. What I like most about this book are the profiles of the young plaintiffs. This is an amazing group of people who are deeply committed to fighting climate change, and their personalities and their passion come through clearly. As the World Burns is a heartfelt look at climate change through the eyes of young people. It is a good recommendation for readers interested in current events, legal issues, youth activism, and climate change, and will appeal to a broad range of ages. It will fit nicely on the shelf with such books as No One is Too Small to Make a Difference by Greta Thunberg and The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. As the World Burns by Lee Vandervoo is a $27.95 hardcover and will be available September 2020. All right, next we have Uprooted, A Gardener Reflects on Beginning Again by Paige Dickey. Paige Dickey is a well-known garden designer and longtime garden writer whose work has appeared in House and Garden, Architectural Digest, and Fine Gardening. Her former garden, Duck Hill, was also well-known and has been featured in the New York Times, Elle Decor, and Vogue. Uprooted is Paige's story of leaving a beloved garden and creating a new, very different garden. Walking away from her celebrated garden at Duck Hill wasn't easy. She left a landscape she spent 34 years making, including the many plants and trees she'd watched grow over time. Paige reflects on this transition and what it takes for a gardener to start again. Readers will follow Paige through the process of searching for a new home, getting to know the surrounding landscape, establishing the garden, and the joy of discovering how to be a different kind of gardener in a wilder setting. The thing that most impressed me is that while many baby boomers are in the process of downsizing their home, Paige Dickey and her husband did just the opposite. They went from 3 acres in Westchester County, New York, to 17 acres in Connecticut with a view of the Berkshire Hills. Paige was 74 at the time, and her husband, Bosco, was 80. But Paige learned to garden smarter, not harder. By the time Paige moved to Connecticut, she not only had her many years of experience, but also a better understanding of how to garden more closely with nature and how to let it do most of the work for her. I do want to point out that while Uprooted is illustrated, it is more narrative than how-to. It will appeal to any fan of classic garden writers such as Margaret Roach and Dominic Browning, as well as readers of such books as Life in the Garden by Penelope Lively and My Garden by Jamaica Kincaid. Uprooted is a $27.95 hardcover and will be available in September 2020. Excuse me, needed a tea break. All right, finally, Timber Press invites you to take a literary tour of the Magnolia State with A Place Like Mississippi, a journey through a real and imagined literary landscape. The landscapes of Mississippi can be felt in the work of the state's many lauded writers, and that list is impressive. Beloved authors such as Eudora Welty, Tennessee Williams, and William Faulkner, as well as modern writers such as Jesmond Ward, Angie Thomas, and Donna Tartt, have all called the Magnolia State home. You cannot read the work of these authors and not come away with a sense of place that the state and the American South represents in the words of these writers, but also in the American mythos at large. In A Place Like Mississippi, W. Ralph Eubanks explores this landscape, as well as its history, and reveals the many ways it has informed the work of these writers. He crosses the whole state, and readers will visit places as diverse as the Gulf Coast, the Piney Woods, the Hill Country, and the Delta. Eubanks, currently a visiting professor of Southern Studies at the University of Mississippi, is a well-connected and respected Mississippi expert. A native Mississippian himself, he has spent time in all of the state's 82 counties, and he knows its writers and its complicated history well. He is the perfect local guide to take readers on this journey. A Place Like Mississippi includes both contemporary and historical photography, which captures the beauty and the complexity of the state's landscape, its literature, and its history. It makes a great recommendation for fans of Southern literature and those interested in the American South, and will fit in with books such as Literary Places by Sarah Baxter and Booked by Richard Kreitner. A Place Like Mississippi is a $27.95 hardcover and is available February 2021. All right, that concludes the Timber Press portion of this program. Thank you so much for letting me share a few of our upcoming books, and bye for now.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, continuing our journey together, is immunity. The immune system is our first line of defense against the hordes of microbes that threaten us constantly. Just like our heart and lungs, it works around the clock to keep us alive. Immunity answers the questions, what can I do to strengthen my immune system? Dr. Jenna Macchiocci has studied the interplay of immunity, lifestyle, and health for over 20 years, and her book is filled with authoritative guidance on the best foods to eat to boost your immune system, the importance of movement and how often to exercise, the essential link between immunity and sleep. See previously mentioned how to sleep, and so much more. Dr. Macchiocci also debunks common myths, explores why some people can never get ill, and explains how germs can actually be good for us. Which is what I tell myself every time I ride the subway. Germs are good for you. All right, next up we have the Good Ancestor. The most important question we must ask ourselves is, are we being good ancestors? That was a question posed by Jonas Salk, who cured polio in 1953. He saved millions of lives, but he refused to patent his cure or make any money off of it. His radical thinking of what we owe future generations should be an inspiration to all of us, but it has hardly taken hold. Businesses can't see past the next quarter. Politicians can't see past the next election. We rarely stop to consider whether we're being good ancestors, but the future depends on it. Here, leading public intellectual philosopher and best-selling author Roman Krznaric explains 6 practical ways we can retrain our brains to save our future, such as adopting deep time humility, recognizing that our lives are a cosmic eye blink, and cathedral thinking, starting projects that will take more than one lifetime to complete. His aim to inspire a time rebellion to shift our allegiance from our generation only to all humanity, present and future. All right, let's shift our mindset and take us into a world of fantasy and magic. I am very excited about this book, which combines magic and romance. Beatrice Claiborne is a sorceress who practices magic secretly, terrified of the day she will be locked into marriage and lose her magic in order to protect her unborn children. She dreams of becoming a full-fledged magus and pursuing magic as her calling, as men do, but her family is in severe debt, and the only way she can save them is by securing an advantageous match. In a stroke of luck, Beatrice finds another way to become a magus, but she must enter into a pact that could see her lose her heart. So, what will it be? Lost heart or lost magic? And how can she choose just one, knowing that she will forever regret the path not taken? On fragile waves, Firuze and her brother Noor are children of fire, born in Afghanistan, fractured by war. When their parents decide to leave, they spin fairy tales of their destination, the mythical land and opportunities of Australia. As the family journeys from Pakistan to Indonesia to Nauru, heading toward a hope of home, they must rely on fragile and temporary shelters, strangers both mercenary and kind, and friends who vanish as quickly as they're found. When they arrive in Australia, what seemed like a stable shore gives way to treacherous currents. Neighbors, classmates, and the government seek their own ends, indifferent to the family's fate. For Firuze, her fantasy world provides some relief, but as her family and home splinter, she must surface from these imaginings and find a new way forward. All right, that concludes the adult portion of our program. Next up, we have kids and YA titles, and to kick us off, we're joined by Megan Harley from Algonquin Young Readers.
Hi, hello everyone. It is a pleasure and an honor to talk to you today, and as well as a pleasure and honor to talk about these next 3 titles. So first up is Skunk and Badger, which is the first title in a new 3-book middle grade series about a classic odd couple friendship peppered with modern twists, written by Newbery Honor author Amy Timberlake and illustrated by Caldecott medalist John Clausen. Badger lives alone in a rambling brownstone, completely absorbed in his very important rock work. He's completely unprepared when he gets a new roommate in the bouncy and chatty Skunk. But as Skunk settles in with his ukulele and his flock of chicken friends, Badger realizes that having a roommate might not be so bad after all. The animal odd couple friendship is, of course, a beloved staple of children's literature that calls to mind classics like Frog and Toad. But Amy Timberlake gives the tradition several twists that might also have readers thinking of Wallace and Gromit. In addition to being wise and compassionate, Amy's narration is sly, witty, and offbeat in the best ways. And beyond Badger's brownstone, Amy has created a fully imagined town that is brought to life with John Clausen's beautiful art. One elementary school librarian called this book a sweet, funny, and fanciful novel. This book also gets you really thinking about how unexpected change can actually be great for you. Skunk and Badger is a book you'll want to read, reread, and read aloud again and again. Next, we have Furia by Shamile Syed Mendez, which is the story of Camila Hassan. At home in her working-class barrio of Rosario, Argentina, Camila Hassan lives within her family's narrow expectations. On the field, she is La Furia, a powerhouse of skill and talent as a soccer player. When her soccer team qualifies for the South American tournament, Camila gets the chance to see just how far those talents can take her. At the same time, though, Camila's old flame, Diego, is back in town. He's become an international soccer star in Italy, but his feelings for Camila haven't changed. As her life becomes more complicated, Camila is faced with an impossible choice. Live the life her parents want for her, choose the certain future of comfort and ease offered by Diego, or risk it all for a chance at a professional soccer career. This Own Voices Latinx novel will appeal to readers of diverse stories and romances, like I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, With the Fire on High, and A Very Large Expanse of Sea. Next, we have Premeditated Myrtle, the first in the Myrtle Hardcastle series. Premeditated Myrtle is the start of a brand new middle grade cozy series written by Elizabeth C. Bunce. Myrtle is 12, obsessed with the fledgling criminal science scene, and is determined to discover the mystery behind her neighbor's recent death. I like to imagine Myrtle as a Victorian-era Harriet the Spy. The book is perfect for readers who are looking for the next Nancy Drew, or who just love a good mystery to solve. Kirkus says Myrtle is a saucy, likable heroine who shines in a mystery marked by clever, unexpected twists. And Booklist gave Premeditated Myrtle a star, saying it celebrates independent women of intellect, and that Myrtle's spirited investigation is a joyful thing to behold. The second book in the series, How to Get Away with Myrtle, will publish simultaneously to kick off the series in a big way. And the second book in the series sees us follow Myrtle onto the M2A train, which is a favorite mystery staple of mine. So cuddle up and get cracking on the case with Myrtle this fall.
Thank you, Megan. Next up, we've got some nonfiction for your kids, ages 10 to 14. At a time when the Constitution is regularly in the news cycle, understanding this foundational document is more important than ever. Luckily, the Constitution Decoded is a delight, and it's so accessible. It offers a direct translation of the text, dissecting every word, phrase, and idea. Then it connects the Constitution to major historical figures and events using full-color illustrations and examples of how the document works in practice. Katie Kennedy, a college history instructor and YA novelist, is the author, and it has been vetted by the University of Pennsylvania law professor Kermit Roosevelt. The Big Fat Notebooks, with nearly 4.6 million copies in print, revolutionized the study guide for middle schoolers, and the latest one, Computer Science and Coding, has just published. Now, the series is graduating to high school, announcing the first 2 titles, Everything You Need to Ace Chemistry and Geometry in One Big Fat Notebook. Those are 2 separate books. Using the same formula that made the middle school series so successful, these new high school titles tackle difficult subjects in a lively, memorable, intuitive, and fascinating way. Critical ideas are broken down and clearly explained. Doodles illuminate tricky concepts. There are mnemonics for memorable shortcuts and quizzes to recap everything. Both have been written by actual teachers with years of experience in their subject. I think this book is so cute. So Embarrassing welcomes you into a world that shows you are not alone. Discover not only the humor of accidentally calling your teacher mom in front of the whole class, but the relief in knowing that it happens to everybody. And then some wickedly funny ideas for how to make the whole thing into a joke. Laugh out loud funny, yet enormously compassionate, So Embarrassing is a comic-style narrative of vignettes and stories about all the things that make kids feel awkward and embarrassed. Written and drawn by the best-selling creator of Fashion Kitty and the Just Grace series, So Embarrassing combines humor, scientific facts, tips for recovering quickly, and practical advice. Rise of the Red Hand is a super cool sounding YA novel that is pure dystopian perfection. The South Asian province is split in 2. Uplanders lead luxurious lives inside a climate-controlled biodome dependent on technology and gene therapy to stay young and healthy forever. Outside the bubble, the poor and forgotten scrape by with discarded black market robotics, struggling to survive in slums threatened by rising sea levels, unbreathable air, and deadly superbugs. A Shiva works for the Red Hand, an underground network of revolutionaries fighting the government. When a Shiva crosses paths with the brilliant hacker Riz Ali, a privileged uplander who finds himself embroiled in the Red Hand's dangerous activities, they uncover a horrifying conspiracy the government will do anything to cover. From armed guards kidnapping children to massive robots flattening the slums to a pandemic that threatens to sweep through the city like wildfire. Shiva and Riz Ali will have to put aside their differences in order to fight the system and save the communities they love from destruction. And we're going to finish out our book buzz here with a little bit of fun. Cardboard box engineering. For creative kids aged 9 to 14, cardboard is the perfect eco-friendly building material, and cardboard box engineering is the perfect guide to get them started. A working kaleidoscope, a marble roller coaster, a robotic hand, and a wind-powered tractor with cardboard gears are just some of the ingenious projects. Working with simple household tools, kids can follow the step-by-step photographic instructions to exercise their design smarts, expand their 3D thinking, and learn the basics of physics and engineering with activities that have real-life applications. This is from the author of the best-selling Mason Jar Science, and it will be just as much fun as that book was. Now, look at how cool that is. Paddle wheel boat. Don't forget to download the handout. Case sensitive, very important, so you can remember all the books that we just talked about and all the bonus books that we have coming. So many titles that I wish we could get through, but they are beautiful and interesting and smart, and they cover every single subject. Look at them. Woohoo! Even kids' books. This has been a real treat being able to talk about some kids' books because I don't ever get to do that. But for now, feel free to get in touch with any questions. Stay well, and thank you so much for tuning in to our Workman Book Buzz.